Welcome, viewer, to episode 51 of KSP to Mars, where we struggle, and struggle is the operative word, to get to Mars, the red planet. We have got there, but we have so far not touched down a single thing safely. So the planet has been littered on, but not set foot on. Today, contrary to my promise of the previous episode, we are not immediately launching for the planet again. We could, but then we'd have to wait a year and a half, and that's a lot of in-game time going to waste. Of course, it doesn't really matter, but, well, it interrupts the flow of things, I like to think. Now, what we're going to do today is what I call a science interlude. If we have a look at the R&D building, and we haven't done so in a while, because, well, I haven't been gathering a lot of science, really, we can still see this nuclear fusion node. That's the one I want for now. It's 3000 science, that's 2200 short of what we have, so we have a ways to go. Today we're staying a little bit closer to home. We are doing the space high science of the sun, of the solar space, and we're going to bring the gravity scan back, we're going to bring the magnetometer back, and we're going to do the materials and the goo for this little bit of extra science. Additionally, we are going to visit the moon, and we are going to bring back all these gravity scans that have thus far only been transmitted, and these from high space over the moon. So what we're going to do today is go into a high polar lunar orbit and a low polar lunar orbit, get all those gravity scanners, and then nip out into high solar space just outside Kerbin's sphere of influence, and then go back. Hopefully that will give us a large amount of science. What's going on? First though, I want to have a look at the tracking station. Something completely unrelated, I made a 100% stock installation of the game, again just to play around with that, and I noticed that that is getting a lot more frames per second than my installation here. As you may have noticed in the past few videos, on some occasions I get really low frame rates, which is not nice to watch and certainly not nice to play. So I've decided, well, we are going to finally clean up this tracking station. All the debris, I like to keep all of it because that's realistic. And look at that, what a mess it is, but it does end up slowing down the game a lot. And contrary to the stock game, where if you leave some debris in your equatorial orbit, you are almost guaranteed to encounter it again, things are so much larger here in the real solar system that to date I have not encountered a single one of these debris pieces. You know, the gray rectangles that come into your flight screen, and then you go like, oh yeah, that's debris from that flight. That has never happened yet. So this is nice to look at. It is a footprint of what we have done, accomplished, or at least tried to accomplish. And if we zoom out, we can see the solar system is much the same. There's debris everywhere. But it does bog down the game, I think, so I'm going to delete it. Yeah, so have a look at that. This is our footprint, and we are shoveling over that. So all this debris is going to go. I won't show you that because that will be rather tedious. These probes here, a lot of them are, well, old as well. So I'm going to briefly mention them. We have the I rocket, and I don't remember what this is. It has a periapsis of 90 kilometers, so this should have burned up by alright. But we can have a look at what that is. Was it the Sputnik? Let's have a look at that. This is an old one. I think this is it is not the first Sputnik because this has batteries. Let's have a look. It has electric charge. Does it have a solar panel? I don't know where it gets the electric charge because it's been in space for years and years. Does it have fuel? It has no fuel. Anyway, damn it, I don't want to delete it. It's just a remnant. It's one of the first things that got to orbit. But then again, it has its periapsis in the atmosphere, so it should have decayed, and I am declaring that it now has decayed. So yeah, our monument of spaceflight will be gone. Let's have a look at that. Delete, terminate it. And then we have the rocket 2A. This is much the same way, but in a stable orbit. So we can't delete the vessel, but we can lose its tracking data. We don't care about that anymore, it's gone. This is a flag that can remain. This is the NG3, the Newgrounds vessel, with a goo canister. Originally launched to explore high space over Kerbin with a goo canister, didn't quite manage it, losing the tracking data from that. There we go. Then we have the same mission with a materials bay. That is currently in a solar orbit, and even though it might one day return, we are losing its tracking data. This is a flag again. I want probes only. The goo here around the sun, that is tracking data definitely lost. Uranus probe, that's still very useful. We are going to eke out some funding so this can still be continued. The Tech Lab 2 probe, no idea what that is. We're going to have a look at that in a second. Generation 2 probe orbiting the sun. This was set up for a Mercury encounter. Didn't quite make it, if I remember, so losing the tracking data from that. This one here landed at Venus, so yeah, we're gonna leave that there because, well, you know, it's a monument and all. Orbiting Duna, that can remain. Landed at Duna, that can remain. Mercury 2 on an escape trajectory out of the solar system. What do we have? Another Mercury probe that has outlived its usefulness, losing the tracking data from that. We can sell these telescopes, these radio transmitters on the black market or something. The Photon Sailor, we are going to keep that. We are keeping the Venus probe, we're keeping the power relays. Jupiter science probe, ooh, that is painful. We are going to keep that for now because it has a functioning beamed power transmitter and a lot of fuel. So if we at some point upgrade our beamed power stations, this could be useful. Saturn science probe, this is still en route for Saturn, so we're going to keep that as well. So that's 12 probes now, along with a few landed ones. And we're going to have a look at the Tech Lab 2 probe. That could well be a piece of debris, or due to the way the game names things, it could just be the actual lab. What do we have here? Oh yeah, this is one of these orbital debris pieces. We can safely lose the tracking data from that. Let's go ahead and do that. Right, so that should clear up space around Earth a little bit, or at least, well, on our tracking radars, because we all know, of course, these things are still there. We're just not seeing them anymore. So we have ships. What do we have in ships here? We have the Luna 2. This is, of course, probably important. And we have the Lab Crew Hab, a relic that these things still have fuel, still have capability, so we're going to leave them. We have the Luna 4 ship. This thing, of course, we can't cancel that very much. There's people in it. Mars Lab has people in it. Luna Land Lab. This is the crashed, well, sort of base here. And the Lobber on the moon. Yeah, of course, we are not going to lose the tracking data from any of that. Our bases here, of our stations, I mean, the failed lander, turned space station, and the Tech Lab 2 around Kerbin. EVAs, these are the 3 zombie Kerbals. We are going to leave them. And we have, of course, 11 flags. Some of them on Kerbin, some of them on the moon, well, all of them on the moon. There's no flags on other bodies yet. So that leaves 115 pieces of debris. I'm going to delete each and every one of them. And that was that for our little history lesson now. We're going to proceed with launching the Science Explorer that will go to the moon and solar space now. So I'll see you when that has reached orbit. And there we are, in orbit with the Interlude Science Explorer, Corrig at the helm. Reminds me of Corrigan from Peep Show, that wonderful British show. If you haven't seen it, give it a look. It's hilarious or dreadfully boring. One of two, there is no middle road, I don't think. Anyway, on the way to the moon, I've slightly elongated this upper stage because the actual science vessel is rather light. Weighs in at just 13 tons, and most of that is fuel, of course. No long-range mission capability or desire to do so. We should be in and out in about 2 weeks, visiting the moon, doing some orbits, high and low, and of course the solar orbit. Ready for nuclear stage separation now, and throttling up just 800 meters per second to go on this burn. That means that it should all be bang on target. Yeah, that's looking good. heading into the lunar sphere of influence so as to, well, enter a more or less polar orbit. That looks as though it's going to actually happen. Otherwise this ship, well, it's in the dark, so I'm just going to wait until we're in the light and then continue talking. And there we have it, some sunlight to behold this beautiful vessel. We have a tank of fuel and 5 more tanks of fuel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that will give us a lot of delta V. We are currently on a trajectory that will put us in a nicely polar lunar injection moment. Well, we need to do a burn obviously to capture, and that will give us ample opportunity to fill these gravioli readers. I brought a lot of them. I know I can pop Corrig outside of the capsule and take the data and store it inside, and in fact I'm going to do that. But to prevent me having to do that every time I take a reading, I just brought along a whole bunch of them. They're all on the action group 1, I think, if that's stored. So if I press the 1 key, this happens. Get 16 readouts and I get to choose what to do with it. Well, from now of course all these will be trashed. And the beauty of that is that, well, I don't have to manually finagle which gravity reader has a data in it or not. Did I bring... I think I forgot to bring a temperature reader, but oh well. That's not too much points anyway. Bulk of the mission will be these gravity meters. This materials bay, I made a little notepad of what gravity to... of what science to get where. This materials bay is intended for solar orbit. And the goo canisters, one of them is also intended for solar orbit. I did bring 2 for symmetry, but yeah, well, we'll see what happens with those. I have 3 magnetometers, 1 intended for solar space, and 1 intended for lunar space. Well, let's say 2 intended for lunar space, because I don't think these magnetometers have ever been returned. I could have brought more. See if I log the magnetosphere here near Kerbin. It gives me 8 science points, but well, I'm not getting out of bed for 8 science points. This is a mission that, well, if all goes well, should net us hundreds of points. The re-entry system is a thing of beauty, if I do say so myself. It has the inflatable heat shield. It has parachutes here on the materials bay, which is of course meant to be recovered, even though yes, we can store the data in the pod, but it has parachutes here that will, well, deploy and parachute it down, and it has upside down landing legs. So these things will deploy in this direction once the heat shield has separated, so hopefully we will then land upside down and be safe and sound on Earth. Yeah, so I'm going to fast forward to the moon, get into orbit there, do a lot of gravity science, and I'll speak to you from, well, a as of yet uncertain point in the future. Yeah. And here we are burning over the moon, transferring from the high orbit to the lower orbit. Now what I did off screen was a lot of time warping for an hour or 2, stopping, checking the scanners, and then time warping again. Just what Corrig has been doing for the past, well, it's been a few days. I think it's been about 5-6 days in game time. And we've got gravity scans from space high over the midlands, the canyons, which were previously unknown to me, the highlands, the midland craters, the northern basin, the poles, the southwest crater, the northwest crater, the highland craters, and the polar crater. So it's not a quite complete list. I think there's also the midland crater and maybe something else, but it's a good list nonetheless. What the hell is going on? Have I reversed orbit or something? I was doing a burn that was going to drop me in a lower orbit, and everything looks to be fine, but the delta V readout on this maneuver node has just gone nuts. I have not actually reversed direction. I don't know what happened while I was talking to you. Anyway, I'm shooting for a periapsis of 80 kilometers. That's not quite close to the surface, so I can hopefully still do some time warp, but it's still, well, let's go with 90 instead. It still counts as being close to the surface, where we'll repeat this little experiment and see about, well, gathering more science really. I will now give you a small taste of what I've been doing the past 30 minutes. Time warp like this, decrease the time warp, hit 1, check the scanner. Well, this one we already have. Courtesy of my notepad, I know this, so I'm going to recycle these 6 scanners. Well, time warp some more, and check that again. Moon's polar lowlands. Wow, that's a new one. Keep that, and I'm going to write that down. I didn't even know that existed. Polar Low land. So far we're looking pretty good on the science from this mission, so that's good. So I clicked keep it once and then 5 times reset, because that's of course the rest of the experiments. So some more time warping, getting closer to the moon, depleting the time warp, checking that again. No, highlands we have. And I want a maneuver node so that I don't accidentally zip right on past the moon, and that's what Kerbal Alarm Clock obviously does for you. Really, really nice. Let's see, well, the maneuver node doesn't have to be exact because I can just look at the map view while burning. This serves as a Kerbal Alarm Clock reminder to actually stop warping. So, let's check the scanners again. Highlands, we already have that. So basically this is what I'm doing the whole time. Punching the time warp, zipping over the terrain, reducing it, checking the scanners, and keeping the data if it's new, and otherwise recycling it. So let's now focus on getting into the lower orbit. Oh, and this craft, it has a battery, but it has no power generating capacity of any sort. So to maneuver I have to fire the engine. It's not a big deal, but yeah, after coming out of time warp, this ship usually is completely unresponsive until I light the nuclear engine. Fortunately, we still have plenty of fuel, so that should not ever be a problem, really. So that's good. Let's lock in the heading there, cut the engine, time warp forwards to the node. Oh dear, I time warped past the node. The alarm clock didn't stop it, probably because I was so close already. It figured I could handle it myself, but well, what do you know? I don't. I can't and I won't. So now we have the annoying problem that I passed the periapsis, and I'm now trying to burn to reduce my speed. From this burn, I'm not going to be able to get into a nice orbit with well, with an altitude of less than 100 kilometers, because, well, I'm already higher than that. Anyway, I can reduce my apoapsis a bit so it doesn't take too long to loop around for another go at that. So let's just do that. Ooh, it doesn't like if you put a maneuver node while you're burning your engine. It gets confused. So let's try that again, shall we? Nine hours from now. Now let's put in one more science reading. No, nothing new. I'm going to fill up all the gravioli scanners. That's 5 more, and then I'm going to do an EVA to collect the data, and that will be the occasion that I will well, return to you as well, because, well, I've shown you what I'm doing, and it's going to be the same for a little while longer. So see you when Corrigan Kerman gets to go on an EVA. See you then. So there we are, outside of the ship. I managed to grab 16 distinct gravioli datas, and now of course it's the job of Corrigan to, well, to grab all of them. I suppose he doesn't need to grab all of them, because we're not looking to do 16 more gravity scanners, and this whole thing is designed to come back to the planet with us. So there's not a lot of pressure there, but I want to get a good amount of them, so that, well, even if some of these happen to, for whatever reason, get damaged, we still get our science, because this mission I don't really feel like repeating it. It's quite a lot of key presses with the time warp and everything, and it's not very exciting. But hey, for science, you know, we have to do these things. And I didn't put the gravioli recorders in the most accessible place, what with the struts and everything everywhere. Highlands. I have 14 already though, so I'm going to click on one more scanner, that one, and now going to get back into the capsule because I feel like it. We have currently 5 readouts of the entry hatches on this side. We currently have 5 readings of the of space low above the moon. We have the midlands, the highlands, the midland craters, the poles, and the polar crater. Wow. Port anyway, yes. There's one I took a double reading of, the canyons, because that one was new to me. So isn't going to give me full data if I just bring it back, so I thought I'd bring back 2, but well, it doesn't want to let me store that in the capsule. Anyway, we still store the 14 discrete ones, so that's good. And let's see where we are now. Just above the moon's midlands, and I'm fairly confident that we do have EVA reports from pretty much all the biomes, but no, if we do manage to find, like, I don't know, the polar crater or the canyons again, then I'm going to pop out and do an EVA. Otherwise, it is going to be gravity readings all the way. Let's have a look what we have here. Now, when I was in a high orbit around the moon's rotation contributed a fair amount of rotation while I was doing one orbit. So I got to see a lot of the lunar surface. Now that I'm in a close orbit, of course the period is a lot faster, so the moon's rotation doesn't account for so much rotation, doesn't show me that much new terrain per orbit. So what I do to alleviate that is accelerate time, and this looks rather funny, so let's have a look at that. It goes like that, and you see the moon in like a strobe fashion rotating under the orbit. Hopefully none of you is epileptic, otherwise, well, hope that didn't hurt you too much. But I'm having a little bit of trouble finding all these biomes again in the lower orbit, just because we're so much closer to the surface. It takes a little bit more luck and patience to actually find these biomes. So I'm going to keep at it for a little while, but don't be surprised if I don't manage to get a full suite of biome readings, because those midlands, I'm just about sick of those. Anyway, I'm going to do this for a little while longer, and then I'll see you when we head out to solar space to complete our scientific survey. And as promised, here we are. Corrigan has now spent about a month, just about 30 days in lunar orbit. He has seen every square inch of the surface and made a detailed gravity map of all of it. The biomes we managed to get from low space are the midlands, the highlands, the midland craters, the poles, the northwest crater, the highland craters, the polar crater, the polar lowlands, the east far side crater, the twin craters, which are new, we also have an EVA report from there, and the east crater. Missing, that we did find from high orbit, are the canyons, the northern basin, and the southwest crater. A good result, if I do say so myself. Now we're burning for solar space. Here we are burning, setting up an escape vector relative to the moon, which is prograde in the moon's direction of travel around Earth, which will lead us on a escape trajectory, but only just at a 21-day interval. And when we're there, of course, we're going to turn right around immediately after doing the science and fall back to Earth. Well, our rocket, I didn't even bring the flight engineer. It should be well capable of this. Our side tanks are still more than half full, and we have the center tanks here. This is a quickly adapted Mars vehicle. It's intended to do a much similar mission profile to Mars and then return to Earth. So it should do it around the moon here, no sweat. So yeah, that's 280 meters per second more, and I will see you in solar space, and we'll do a recap of the science we have gathered. See you then. And here we are out in solar space, a quick time warp later. Oh well, it's finicking a little bit on the edge. I was in solar space just a second ago, but not any longer, and now I am again. This is good because is it good? It does count as space high over the sun. This is good because it means we are only just on the verge of leaving Kerbin's sphere of influence, which makes it easy to go back. Right, 136 science points if we return this gravity scan while in space high over the sun. Of course we're going to do just that. And we're also going to fill out the rest of our science experiments. Let's have a look at this magnetometer. Another 100 points, give or take. The materials bay, what will that tell us? 60 points, because we did some fairly good we already did a recovery of that, I think. Anyway, do that again. And let's have a look at the goo. Only 19 points, but hey, it's 19 points, so who are we to not be happy with those points? Keep the data. Now, of course, we have to do another EVA to recover all of this. And I'm going to go ahead and... Ooh, that shot us out pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and assume that all these gravity scanners are going to survive the entry due to our big heat shield. And let's have a look. Collect the data. Due to our big heat shield, so I don't have to grab all of that, but I am going to grab the materials bay because, well, why not? And it has in the past been liable to explode quite a few times upon touching the ground in just the wrong fashion. So yeah, there's that. Okay, he can get back inside his spacecraft, and now we're completely laden with science. It's time to head back to Earth, Kerbin, whichever we want to call it. I want to set it as a target, but it doesn't really want to... Oh, I double-clicked something, so now we're focusing on that. Fortunately, that does not remove the... Ah, it's a flag. Wonderful. Fortunately, that doesn't remove the other ship the way it used to happen back before. I think it was 0.14 version of Kerbal Space Program that added persistence. I knew it was very, very special at any rate to... go on. I knew it was very special to be able to encounter a ship you launched previously. And that was amazing. And then we didn't have maneuver nodes or even docking, but we could rendezvous and you could put your ships nose to nose. EVAs, of course, were also impossible back then, but we could put our ships nose to nose and have the Kerbals wave to each other. Actually, we couldn't because we also didn't have IVAs, but we could pretend that they were happy that they were close together, which was a good time. Why am I talking about this old style stuff? Because well, it's not that good of a reason, but I was browsing the forums on the Kerbal Space Program website, and one of the moderators, Salvager, he's been around for a long time as well, used to play a forum campaign game. He used to play in a forum campaign game that I hosted, I think it's over a year ago now. Anyway, when I was trying to put one of these new videos in my KSP Live from Mission Control thread, I have a thread there where I post the videos as well, I couldn't find my topic because he put it in as a sticky because he liked it. That's good. If you're listening, thanks, because I'm on the top of the page, and of course that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm currently thrusting right at Kerbin, I think. Can I see that from here? Where is the planet? Right. Maybe try a little bit slightly less haphazard way of actually getting to Kerbin. Because it shouldn't take 600 meters per second. It should take like 5. Do we have a Kerbin encounter there? Yes. I'm not quite sure why this is taking so many hundreds of meters per second. It shouldn't, but it doesn't really matter because, well, I have the delta V, so I'm just going to point straight at it. Well, I'm pointing straight at the sun now, but still that shouldn't matter because Kerbin and the sun are pretty much in a line. So if I thrust this way, I will eventually end up near Kerbin. So this maneuver node can go away again, and I'll just accelerate time until we are Kerbin encounter. 5 minutes. Yay! We did something. We are back in. We're getting back into the sphere of influence of our home planet, which is good. I'm going to set up a entry trajectory, which will of course be exciting because we don't want that to fail. What with all the science we have and that stuff. So yeah, check back in 1 or 2 seconds when I'll have that set up for you. So here we are back home again. We are not at this moment going to enter into the atmosphere, re-enter into the atmosphere. Look at that, we have a periapsis of 106 kilometers, which is, well, it might just graze the outer gas molecules, but I'm not expecting any serious braking from that. No, we have a lot of valuable data on board, so we need to do a very, very gentle re-entry, and we're currently traveling at 10.5 kilometers per second, which is not a gentle speed at all. What we also have is some tanks full of fuel that should give us a good few kilometers per second of delta V, so what I'm going to do instead of just slamming into the atmosphere willy-nilly is I am going to stop thrusting for one, because otherwise we're going to enter regardless. I am going to try and slow down as much as possible on the rockets. Now I don't have a full 10 kilometers per second of delta V, that would be silly, but I should have a few, so the least I can do is lower my orbit, because now it's like a comet, very elliptical. It's already been reduced by a fair margin. I'm going to reduce it as much as possible, and if I have enough to like reduce it further than a 100 by 100 kilometer orbit, I will do so as well and slow down as much as possible on just the rocket. Then of course I'm going to quickly turn around, deploy the heat shield, and well, ride out the resultant shockwave, because of course it's still probably going to be a, well, there's still going to be fire, let's put it that way. But first there's going to be nuclear fire, which is gently slowing us down. Who would have thought that? Nuclear fire to gently do anything. So yeah. Let's time warp. I don't want to inadvertently tumble into the atmosphere engine first without the heat shield. That's just scary. So now I'm going to thrust backwards. That will slightly lower the periapsis, and that should probably, well, serve to lower it. I'm going to go for a very conservative 90 kilometer periapsis, because what we've learned on Mars is that this heat shield, when deployed, will generate a lot of drag. And of course Corrigan, our brave astronaut, has to survive this this entry passage. So it can't exceed 10 Gs really. Well, it can for brief periods of time, but if it does so for longer than a few seconds, the chances of him dying are significant. And of course we don't want to do that. We can do the Trident proven deploy the chutes before you die maneuver, but then, well, we'd have a dirty capsule and we want to save Corrigan as well. Yeah, so at least the orbit has been reduced a good amount already. That's already like 2-3 kilometers per second less of an entry speed, which is of course always good news. So let us have a look at this. Now I could ditch the fuel tanks here and now, but I've just been going on about how I don't like orbital debris so much, so I'm going to keep them attached until our periapsis is well inside the atmosphere, so well that orbital debris isn't really a problem anymore. Right, I know I said I was going to go for a periapsis of 90, and I am, but I'm going to raise that again from here, because I'm burning. Yeah. Now I can feel comfortable ditching these full tanks. So by whoa! Oh, that's the physical time warp that's still engaged. They went off at warp speed, man. So let's time warp forwards to apoapsis now. Gee, this time warping is so comfortable. Give it a slight bit of thrust. Well, you will have noticed that I'm just thrusting all over the place. So that's the luxury of having enough fuel to do these kind of maneuvers. Yeah. So that is good. So now we are looking at 90 kilometer periapsis, and I'm going to keep this rocket attached until we are at like 200 kilometers. Actually, I need a little bit more periapsis so I can get away with braking a little bit before actually reaching that periapsis. We're looking now at 150 kilometers. That's fine. Then once we reach 250 kilometers, I will commence braking, and that means that our periapsis will then drop to a manageable, well, what did we want? 90 kilometers. So 375, that's as good a number as any. And let's commence the final braking run, shall we? Time warp engaged again, and we're going to keep doing this until this number here reaches 90. So yeah, we have a 3.3 thousand kilometer orbit by a 90 kilometer orbit. Well, that's still not completely slowed down, of course, but it is a re-entry from a regular orbit instead from a lunar approach trajectory. That's a good few kilometers per second difference. So that is, of course, good to know. And now I'm going to separate the the rest of the rocket. We don't need that one anymore, and our periapsis is low enough that that should burn up, or at least if it doesn't, I can delete that without feeling like a cheater because its periapsis is in the atmosphere. So there we go. Are we have a full charge of electricity? We do. Let's swing that so that it has a little bit more backward speed, so it will definitely re-enter. And here we are now, ready to enter the atmosphere. So we are orienting ourselves prograde. And of course we are going to deflate, not decouple it, we're going to inflate the heat shield. Let's go. Look at that, all these scientific experiments safely tucked away behind a canopy of, well, safety. So, of course, more time warp will put us into the atmosphere, inevitably, inexorably. We are doomed to enter, hopefully. Oh dear, this reaction wheel is strong, that's dangerous. I'm going to use it until the batteries run out to keep us oriented prograde. I hope that such a blunt shape will, I don't know, be aerodynamically stable in this configuration. I think it is, but I think it also is stable completely the other way around. Then it will function as a parachute and everything will just be horrible. So we don't want that to happen. We're at 98 kilometers now. Are we experiencing any significant drag? Yes, we are. 5 kilonewtons, and while that is a far cry from a lot, it definitely is something. Aren't you enjoying my words? So let's try some physical time acceleration for those long periods of re-entry stress. We are still dropping to 91 kilometers, and it is very possible that we are just going to skip straight out of the atmosphere again, and that it is going to take several passes to actually enter. But that doesn't worry me. I don't mind that. And it looks like we might, yeah, we are going to enter, definitely. Yeah, our periapsis is moving ahead of us, and we are going in, as they say in the military, and the game recognized this as well by changing the camera to a surface mode. So time to get off that time warp, I do think, and slightly adjust our orientation. Now the next thing that's going to happen when I press spacebar is that these parachutes will deploy. I'm not going to do that just yet. I think I could because they are safe behind the heat shield, but if I do so now, they might slow us down so much that the G-forces might become a problem, which is of course something we don't want. So I'm going to wait either until the G-forces are a problem anyway, so that Corrigan does the not very popular but necessary maneuver to deploy the chutes before he dies. We don't want to make him do that maneuver, but well, it is an option. Or otherwise we do it after the violent heating has subsided and we are sub kilometer per second. We are at sub kilometer per second speeds, and then we ditch the heat shield and deploy the parachutes. Well, first the parachutes, then the heat shield, so that when we do ditch it, we don't smack into it. Because we will have more deceleration because of the parachutes then, and the heat shield will fall away forwards. That's the plan at any rate. Currently decelerating at about 5 Gs, and that is looking nice and smooth. We have no significant heating yet. Let's toggle the display and see that. 200 degrees. I think this is a thermometer at any rate, because what the hell else is it gonna be? The Gs are mounting quite rapidly now. We're at 60 kilometers. Coming up on 8 Gs. Of course that means our speed is plummeting a lot, plummeting fast as well. I'm very scared for Corrigan's safety. I have my hands on the space bar here. As soon as they go, like, as soon as that message nearing crew G limit pops up, I'm going to press that, which will increase the Gs, sealing his fate. But at least we will have the science, and we should have a lot of science. This heat shield is amazing. It's applying so much G-forces so high in the atmosphere so that heating is hardly a problem, and it's just massive, and I love it. And the G-forces are dropping, so Corrigan is happy as well. Look at him go in the bottom right corner of our screen. Reaching crew G limit. No, 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 no. Parachutes. Parachutes are deployed. We should be safe. I don't know why it's going on about the crew G limit when we're under 5 again. Maybe it's like a cumulative effect where he doesn't like where he just doesn't like G's. Okay, here's our parachutes, and that means we can ditch the heat shield now. Bye bye heat shield. Oh, how is that decelerating slower than us? How did it just press into the ship when it was... This is still generating more drag than the parachutes? Wow. Either that or the vessel is not properly shielded anymore when we decouple, and thus going faster now. Either the vessel is now not being shielded from the airflow by this heat shield, making it fall faster, or this was such a large contributor to our falling, to our descent slowing, that it doesn't matter. Either way, this is now a big hazard, because this can, I don't know, roll over the spaceship and... Oh, yeah, there we go. That was completely safe. Wonderful. You might think that these are landing legs, but no, they are the magnetometers that are being returned to Earth. The landing legs I have cleverly put here. So look at that. We have a vehicle that can land upside down. And it looks as though everything is going to happen just the way we want it. Let's have a look. Where are we going to land? Can we do a crew report from here? Is that interesting at all? Crew report. Highlands. Well, they have that data already. Wow, for once something appears to have gone right. We have entered, the heat shield has separated, albeit with a little bit of separation anxiety. It did want to stick on the rocket a little bit longer than I intended it to. And we have all our science experiments here. 3 parachutes, so yeah, that should be no problem coming down. We have the capsule here that has most of the science. It's being rescued by landing legs. If something goes wrong now, I don't know what that could be. Corrigan has even survived. He did experience quite a few G-forces, but he is a happy man. Let's have a look inside the capsule. There's nothing we can do anyway. We would just fuck it up. Look, there we're looking at the grass. We're looking down now. So we have do we have an altimeter? According to this altimeter, we are almost on the ground, like 700 meters to go. So this really is highland area. Traveling at 100 meters per second, I think that's completely within the safe range for parachute deployment in such a fashion that doesn't rip the craft apart. I hope that's the case anyway, otherwise I'm going to cry. Here we go, here we go, here we go, come on. Yes, gentle, nothing the matter. Gently, gently, gently down the atmosphere. Now, of course, impatient as I am, going to enable the physical time warp. That might very well spell doom for Corrigan, but I'm going to disable it once we reach the surface. Well, just before, obviously. Look at that, and he's looking at a touchdown speed of 5.4 meters per second, which is still a pretty rough bump, but nothing more than that. He should be able to manage that. No problem. There we go. And it didn't even explode upon falling over. That would have been something. So let's recover this. And I'm betting for more than 1,000 science. This does deplete pretty much all of the lunar science we could have gotten. There's a few score. Wow, we got 1,394 science this mission. That's amazing. 30 experiments recovered, and we are well on the way, all of a sudden, to that fusion technology, which of course we want. We crave, desire, and want this. 800 more points. I'm thinking we should be able to get that from a Mars science mission, which I'm definitely going to do tomorrow. What we have here, experimental electrics. We could now buy this. More beamed power stuff, but we're going to stay away from that until we have the fusion power to actually generate the power. Anyway, long episode today. We did a lot of science, did a lot of talking. Check back tomorrow for the Mars Express, and I know that's the name of a actual Mars program, has nothing to do with it. We are just going to Mars, getting science and unlocking fusion power. I can feel it. It's going to happen. So, thanks for watching. I'm Lorenzo. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, as always. I like that shit. And leave comments, because I love fan mail. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.